The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation and go to the grave with the song still in them. I'm Trish Kinoti, and this is Adam's Rib. Welcome. Today, we're going to talk about cycles and essentially, literally, what are cycles, where they've come from, and how to break out of them. So let's start at the beginning. What exactly is a cycle? A cycle is basically, to put it simply, what is abnormal becomes normal. A cycle is influenced by environment in which you grew up in. A cycle is influenced by an environment in which is a sustained system that kept you in a state of dysfunction. It was modeled to you as functional, but actually in actuality it's dysfunctional. And the problem with cycles is that more often than not, because said environment has modeled it as normal, has modeled it as usual, and has been sustained over a period of time, what happens is that your brain begins to communicate to you that this is what is normal. Now, cognitively, yes, you feel like cognitively it is abnormal. Your brain has taken it on and said this is normal. Your behaviors therefore reflect the said pattern, and then but for some reason, whether you're aware of it or not, you begin to reflect that. Say you begin to reflect that the same behavior, or you begin to think about it as you begin to actively seek it out, or you attract said circumstances to you. But let me break it down slowly. Cycles are basically what the cards you are dealt, to put it mildly, the cards that you are dealt. Now we all know that unfortunately we don't get to choose the some situations in our lives. We don't get to choose where we're born. We don't get to choose our environment. What we do have a chance to change is where we end up, and that's what we're going to do today on this channel. So cycles is basically abnormality modeled as normal, and now we're looking for the chance to break out of abnormality so that we can become normal. Now, normal sometimes is ascribed to us by society, but also more importantly, what feels normal and what is modeled to you from the most authentic part of you. What is it that you say, you know what, this is what is normal to me, and this is what feels right to me, as long as it's not being influenced by negativity from the negative dysfunction of our past. So cycles, I want you to picture, when we say cycles, think about you keep going round and round and round. Think about a behavior, think about an environment, think about a form of being that was modeled to you, whether it's by your parents, whether it's by your neighborhood, by your friends. Like, just think about one specific thing in your life that you definitely feel is a cycle. Honed in on it? Okay, great. Now, I want you to think more cognitively about who modeled that behavior to you. Was it a caregiver? Was it a parent? Was it your friends? Was it your siblings? Was it your tribe? Was it your community? Like, just think about all the things that have influenced you. What is it that made this particular behavior normal? Great. Now remember, as we go along, you're going to notice that I'm really interested in connecting mind, body, and spirit. When you think about said behavior, for example, let's say you grew up in a violent household, how is it that has made you feel within your body? Where does that realization feel in your body, that you realize, wow, this behavior that I was modeled to actually is not normal, nor does it feel good. I want you to begin to identify the where in your body that you felt that, oh dear, this actually was not modeled to me properly. All right, great. You're doing great, don't worry. So, the thing about cycles is that because it was modeled to you from a young age, your brain took it on as normal, and then your psyche took that on, and then it reflects back to you in your behaviors. But the problem is that as much as it's reflected in your behaviors, what happens is that you also subconsciously or energetically, whatever it is, you begin to attract that. Either you yourself may not exhibit that behavior. For example, if you grew up in chaos, you yourself are like, no, I grew up in a chaotic environment, but I have made the decision to be more organized. But for some reason, somehow my environment does not seem to, the people I choose, maybe it's my friends, whether it's my intimate partners, whether it's the place I live, whether it's the place I choose to work, that your choices seem to still reflect the original modeling, which we've decided is dysfunctional. So what happens that unless you're able to actively point at and say, you know what, this behavior that was modeled to me this is what was modeled to me. This is not what I wanted, but this is where I find myself. Again, you keep going round and round and round. So finally, you find yourself repeating it. You yourself may not repeat it. Now, there's some people who actively repeat it. For for example, if you grew up in a violent household, you find yourself also in exhibiting violent tendencies. Or if it isn't you, you find yourself attracted to violence. So, for example, people who grew up with, for example, abusive households, that was modeled to them as normal, a normal way to resolve conflict. Now, you find yourself, therefore, when you're in your own conflict situation, to be violent, as opposed to, for example, maybe debating or sitting down and discussing the problem, finding compromise. Your go-to is violence. If it was alcohol, if you grew up in an alcohol-filled household, so to you, it's like alcohol is not just a simple thing where you just drink 2 beers and that's it. You find yourself always having to push yourself to the brink of being drunk, like being unable to function, right? And then what happens is that pole pole, either you exhibit that behavior, or the people you find yourself attracted to. That's what fun is. So your friends, you notice, okay, our friends, your friends don't seem to know how to stop after 2 beers. You guys have to keep it going to the very last brink of like blacking out. You see what I mean? So those kind of things that keep going round and round. So until you first identify that, wow, this behavior that I was modeled to actually is not normal. I don't want to be like this anymore. And it's the key is once you identify that situation, that is what is able to help you break out of said cycle. So then you can decide, either you, for example, it's alcohol, you can decide, okay, let me be sober for like 6 months or something. Now, invariably, I mean, that may sound like a long time, but what happens is that your choices slowly will begin to reflect what you actually want. Like, I do want to just stop at 2 beers. I do want to just go out for a good time and come back home and still be able to function the next day. It's all about just break that cycle. It's about finding the break in that cycle. When you find that break in that cycle, you're able to then model a new behavior, a new choice, a new way of thinking, where fun does not equal blackout drunk, where an intimate relationship does not equal abuse, where conflict resolution does not immediately mean a violent outburst. It actually means sitting down and talking about it and finding resolution and moving on. So that's what I'm saying when I talk about cycles. So that's why I asked you at the beginning to think about a particular behavior you feel is keeps rearing its ugly head in your life, and that is the key. But don't worry, we're going to keep talking about this. We're going to find the break in your own life, so that you can make the active, positive changes that will be more reflective of your authentic self. So don't worry, we're in this together. But thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to see you, and I'll see you soon.